All right. Well,
I would shake hands, but everyone have a COVID day.
Yes. Feel free to take a bottle of water if you would like.
No, I'm good. I've got this in my mask.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you. So our next candidate is scheduled for 7:15. See you about another minute.
Hello.
Hi there. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let me just check and make sure everything's working on this end. And John, pre-COVID, I think we all would have stood, shook your hand.
Yes.
It would have been wonderful. But we still welcome you, regardless of the lack of handshake. When we spoke on the phone on Monday, I did tell you that this is a public meeting.
Right.
We do have an open line to the public right now. I will tell you, we have 3 people who've called in. One is our town council, so legal's on the phone. Our administrative assistant is on the phone. She's helping us with minutes.
Okay.
And we have a member of the public, Donna McDonald, who actually is also our assessor.
Great.
So some interested parties on the line. If anybody else should join us, I will make sure that I let you know that another person has entered the room, just as I like to keep everybody here in the physical space know who's on the call.
Sure.
I don't like to have surprises for people. It is being recorded, so I wanted to let you know that as well. And as my colleagues have already heard me apologize to the other candidates, I apologize up front if it seems rude that I'm looking at the computer screen, but I'm just trying to manage the technological issues that may come up. I'm hoping that with the speakerphone closer to you, people on the call will hear.
Okay. I'll try to speak loud enough.
Yeah, we have the windows open for a little bit of a cross breeze.
Sure.
But we do have some trucks that are going by that's making it a little difficult for those who are listening on the call. With that, again, my name is Christine Hoyt, so it's nice to see you in person, even though we spoke on Monday. And I just wanted to go around the room and have everyone just say their name, even though our nameplates are in front of us.
Hi, my name's Joe Melnick, and nice to meet you, John.
Hi, Joe.
Rick Blanchard.
Hi, Rick.
Jim Bush, Vice Chairman.
Jim.
John Duval.
Hi, John.
Jay Green.
Okay. So that's all of us. Now we're going to get to know you. We do have a set of questions that we're asking each of the candidates, and we hope to get through that in a period of time where at the end we can leave it up to you to ask us some questions.
Okay.
Okay? So I'll go ahead and get us started. Just tell us, generally speaking, how does your professional experience and your skill set line up with the duties and responsibilities of the police chief for the town of Adams? And what specifically makes you the right fit for our community?
Sure. So everybody that's on the Zoom call, I'm John Mesham. So I've been in law enforcement for 29 years. I currently hold the rank of Master Sergeant with the Connecticut State Police, which makes me the executive officer of Troop E Montville, which is in southeastern Connecticut. That covers a big corner of the state, so it's a mix of what we call resident trooper towns, and that's kind of a unique program to Connecticut. So I'd kind of just like to give you some background on that. The state police provide dedicated troopers. Sometimes it's more than one, sometimes it's one. It can also be a mix of troopers that are supervising town officers. It's really up to the town, and I've been heavily involved in that aspect of things through my career. And so right now, my daily duties are, I have about 37 troopers on patrol. We have about 6 resident troopers, 2 clerks, 4 dispatchers, 4 sergeant and a resident sergeant, and troop mechanic, and then my boss. So it falls on me to schedule everybody across the board. That's a big part of my job. so I have to take care of holidays, vacations, anything that pops up, civil unrest with, people closing the highways. You know, we have to get people into work in short notice. That's what I do right now. I'm also involved in the facilities aspect. I like to say I keep the lights on and I keep the wheels on the car. So I'm also involved with, you know, vehicle assignments, maintaining spare vehicles, really making sure that the day-to-day operations, keep going. I've been deemed a subject matter expert in my position because they're gearing up for another, promotional procedure. So I'm helping with, some of the screening and questions on that. I've also done that as a resident trooper sergeant. So a lot of times I'm on the other side of this interview where we have troopers come in that want to go to positions, and really it's up to me to come up with the scoring matrix and coordinate with HR and get the panel in. We have to do the whole scoring thing and affirmative action and equal opportunity and all that jazz to make it all on the up and up. I think my administrative side really has put me in a good place to be a chief, because a lot of that is relevant to any administrative functions in a police department. I also draw upon my experience as a resident. I was a resident trooper in the town of Essex. And really, you know, again, that resident trooper program is modeled for how the town wants it, and the town really treats the resident trooper as a head of a department. There's usually 4 to 6 full and part-time officers in that town that I would supervise. We had Marine Patrol boat, we had Marine Patrol officers, which was a great aspect to be involved with, because I love being on the water. The K-9 officer, and then, you know, our budget was around, you know, just upwards of $300,000. So, you know, I had the experience of, it fell on me to actually prepare the budget for the town, even though I wasn't a town employee, because they treated me like a head of that department. So I have experience in that. I had to, you know, write the section for the town report. I had to, you know, purchase a vehicle during that time. I had 2 hiring processes that I oversaw for that town, which I think gives me some good insight into there's state requirements that have to get followed to go through that, through the Police Officers and Standards and Training Council. So I think, you know, that helps me fit into the job of a chief, because there's certainly, I think you're gearing up for a hiring process. So that's something I'm very familiar with and would be comfortable with if that fell on me to help out. I think the other thing that prepares me for a chief is I don't only do, you know, operations on the administrative side. I'm still eligible to work overtime as a sergeant, which is can be very beneficial. So that keeps me on the front line side when I want. I certainly did a lot of frontline supervision, so critical incidents, serious and fatal accidents, burglary investigations, sexual assaults. You know, we have detectives with the state police, obviously, but the way we run, the way we're structured, we really investigate a lot of crimes that would normally go to a detective fall on a trooper, or a lot of times a resident trooper, because they have a little more flexibility in what they're doing on their day. So I think investigatory experience-wise, I'm probably have more experience than some might have coming in here. You know, we have a accident reconstruction team, but they don't always get called out, so it's falls on us. Depends on the circumstances. It's more frequent now, but back when I was strictly on the road and a resident trooper sergeant, we had to, take out tape measures and roll tape and get it all done ourselves. So, I think the other thing that would fit well with being a police chief, especially in this town. So, yeah, I know you're asking me about this town. So, you have about 85,000 population, about 23 square miles. That's right in my wheelhouse. That's very similar to the towns that I've worked in. I was a resident trooper sergeant in Troop Pass in Westbrook, which is a shoreline town. Same thing. We had, I had 4 of the larger towns with constabularies. There was 5 more that my counterpart had, and then I was a liaison for one town that just chose to have generalized police services. And in order to do that well, I really needed to interface and deal with Board of Selectmen, not only Board of Selectmen, but I know you have a town manager. Where we are, the first selectman is the full-time in the office all the time. So, I really built my relationships with those folks because, especially in a constabulary where the town, we say constabulary, it's not really a constabulary anymore. Some people will be mad at me for saying that. They're town officers, so they're certified municipal town officers that are being supervised by a resident trooper, which are being supervised by me at the time. So, things would go sideways. There could be issues, and it was really up to me to smooth that out because it can be a tricky kind of thing to supervise officers that aren't employed by you, they're employed by the town. So, when you want to get things done and be on the same page, you really need to fall back on that relationship with the selectmen, to come in and say, listen, this is what's going on, this is what we see, this is what we want to do. And, if you don't have that relationship, I've had selectmen come out and say, well, I feel it's my job to, protect the officers from the state. I'm like, time out. There's no us, them going on here. We're all on the same team. Let's find some common ground. We need to make some changes, and this is why. And, I got to the point where they would really listen to me, and we would find that common ground and come up with solutions for different things going on. So I think that kind of goes to my leadership style, which you're probably interested in, and goes again to my ability to be here. My leadership style depends upon what the situation is and who I'm dealing with. So if we're on a hot call, we have a critical incident kind of thing going on, I'm going to be very directive. Okay, I'm going to be very directed, and I'm just going to fall back on my Marine Corps training and tell people where to go and how to do it, because that's what we need at that time. If it's, it can be a fatal motor vehicle accident or a serious motor vehicle accident, the highway's closed down, I'm going to be somewhat directive. I might gather up everybody at the scene and say, okay, I need somebody to do photos. Who wants to do photos? I need somebody to do the map. Who wants to do the map? Okay, who's going to call out the numbers? And, let the troopers decide who's going to do what. That's fine with me. Part of that is really knowing your troopers and their ability. So, as a leader, I want to know what their ability is, because if somebody that is terrible at reading the tape measure says, well, I'll do the measurements, or whatever, just as an example, that I'm going to say, hang on, let's have somebody else do it. In a nice way, I'm not going to draw attention to it, but we're going to say, no, I'd rather have, this trooper do it, and you do the photos, that kind of thing. That also goes to, when an investigation comes in. Okay, what's the seriousness of the investigation? Are we going to keep it with that specific trooper, or are we going to ask criminal investigations, the detectives to take it? So you have to know the investigator's, ability. I had some top-notch resident troopers that could take anything and just run with it, and would probably do a better job than, but just as well, if not better, than passing it off to a detective. I know you have, the website's up to date. You have 10 officers, 2 sergeants, 3 dispatchers, animal control officer. So again, that's that I'm used to dealing with now in a lot of ways, and it's right in line with what I used to do. So as resident trooper sergeant again in Westbrook, or in Troop F in Westbrook, we had the towns of Westbrook, Old Lyme, Deep River, Essex, and between the resident troopers, there could be, go back to 2, but there used to be 3 in Westbrook. Each other, there could be a seasonal trooper and Old Lyme in addition to the resident trooper. So all told, I'd have about 20 or so that I would have to directly or indirectly deal with. So the resident troopers are doing a lot of the daily stuff in the town, but because I'm not a dedicated resident trooper sergeant to a town, all those reports would be funneling into me.
I did want to correct, I don't think the website was up to date with the staffing.
Okay.
We actually do not have dispatcher over in the police department, so we do not have the 2 dispatchers. 2 sergeants.
12 patrolmen, 1 detective, currently 2 sergeants. We had a lieutenant who's retired and a senior sergeant.
How many reserves? Is it 2?
Right now, 2.
Okay.
That's the makeup of the department, and 1 administrative assistant and an animal control officer who is a full-time position, but it's split between animal control and parking.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So I just wanted to make.
I like multitasking.
Well, good. So we'll go on to the next question, but
Sure.
before we do so, I just wanted to let you know there was another member of the public who did sign on. Her name is Rena, and she's also on. So we have 2 members of the public and legal and admin assistants. So.
Okay, as I mentioned to each candidate, thank you very much for showing interest in this position, and I wish you well.
Thank you.
So, my question is as follows. In light of the ongoing protests taking place throughout our nation and abroad regarding the death of George Floyd by overzealous law enforcement personnel, do you see policing tactics and racial stereotyping continuing? Will the powers that be relent, or will the same situation arise again? I ask this because there have been other racially charged and egregious actions undertaken by police officers, resulting in the unwarranted deaths of Black Americans. Still, nothing has transpired to curb these happenings. Please expound on your views and discuss how racial profiling can finally be put to rest. I strongly believe that all lives matter, regardless of the color of one's skin or any other attribute which one possesses. The world is big enough to accommodate everyone if the blinders are allowed to be removed.
Sure. So that was a lot to take in. So in Connecticut, we have a we live by a very pretty strict racial profiling law that was enacted. So every motor vehicle stop that transpires, we have MDTs in most of our cars, mobile data terminals. So whether it's cleared by the officer or if it's cleared at dispatch, there's a whole host of racial and ethnic and gender questions that have to be answered to satisfy the legislation that was passed in Connecticut. And we've been living with that for numbers of years, so it's not anything new. So it would be, age, race, gender, if there's an ethnicity involved, the duration of the stop, was the vehicle searched, was the vehicle towed. So that, and that's submitted to the state legislature every year by statute, and there's been certain towns, none that, thankfully, that I've been involved with, not in my troop area even, but there's been some municipal towns that were flagged after looking at the statistics. So And once they were flagged, you know, there was some harder look at what was, was it really racial profiling? Were there other factors involved? And, what needed to be done with that? I'm a fan of data. I like looking at data, especially when the town has issues with like speeding or something, and we have a speed recorder and detecting device going up, or burglaries. Why are the burglaries up? Burglaries are usually associated with drugs. Okay, so do we have an emerging drug problem? As far as race, there's about 1 million police in the country that are performing over 375 million interactions a year, and the majority of those interactions are positive. They're not on the news. We're taking a terrible hit culturally, and certain things absolutely need to change. Okay, but every police agency, including Adams, is going to have their own personality, group personality, and they're going to have somewhat of their own culture. Okay, just like you can't paint a racial or ethnic group with the same broad brush, you really can't paint police with a broad brush. So what we can do is, as a chief, and as any other chief, I hope, would ensure that there's stopgaps in place to ensure that there's no red flags like those high racial profiling stops. And if there is, okay, who is it, and what's going on, and what can we change? If there's a culture that is promoting any kind of racial bias or prejudice, then that's just got to be confronted and stopped. I would be remiss if I thought that somehow I was completely colorblind, just like everyone else is. Okay, we all have some inherent bias or some prejudice, and the key there is to really challenge yourself when you see something, and run through your mind, okay, why am I keying in on this? Am I keying in on what's happening, or am I keying in on a racial or ethnic makeup? If you're really honest with yourself, I mean, there's things in the news every day. The Central Park wig out. I mean, that was terrible. We can't say that we're all colorblind and then things like that happen. I don't know the officers in Minneapolis. It disgusted me. I know it disgusted my counterparts. It disgusted my coworkers. From dispatchers to dog handlers. I would hope that would never happen anywhere that I worked. And I would almost suspect that when you look at it, I would suspect that officer's had problems in the past. I suspect he's been disciplined in the past. I think he has. And if you really started talking to people, you might find that there was things that were never documented or never really confronted and disciplined. And that's a problem. That's a culture problem. Especially as a supervisor, you need to confront those things, and they need to be documented, and then there needs to be steps taken to remediate that. If you're in law enforcement long enough, are you going to be in a situation where somebody, you're seeing somebody that might be starting to get heavy-handed? Yeah, I've been doing this for 29 years. As a trooper, as a sergeant, you step in and you go, okay, it's enough, knock it off, put the cuffs on, get them in the car, or, what have you, we're done here, and that's why I am definitely more disappointed, if not disgusted, at the backup officers, because they failed as backup officers. They failed. We call them wingmen sometimes. They failed because they failed that officer that was kneeling on George Floyd. All it would take is one of them to say, okay, enough, sit him up. We're done. Wait for the ambulance. Let him sit up. That, it would have been that simple, and it would have never been on the news. You know, we wouldn't be talking about this. But I also suspect that because that officer's probably had issues, and it's already coming out that he's had issues, and it's terrible. I would suspect that he would have been doing that to anybody, regardless of their race. That's just my guess. That's my feeling, because I just think that, you know, he's probably the guy that, you know, through your career, you hear, oh yeah, you hear him on the radio saying he's gonna come back you up, and you're like, oh, no, stay away, you know. But, you know, there's certain people that, you know, you get everything calm, and then they show up, and all of a sudden it's not calm anymore. And that's, you know, that's a conversation, you know, that's, you know, a lot of that can be handled officer to officer, trooper to trooper, say, listen, you need to knock it off.
Thank you very much. I'm not trying to cut you
Sure.
off, but we've got, you
Yes,
know, a lot
I
of
understand.
questions, and thank you for your thorough answer.
Okay, if you would, identify and discuss your experience in creating, reviewing, assessing law enforcement policy and procedure, agency directives, or general orders.
Sure. So we're a big part of that, where that comes into play, if we receive a complaint, we have a pretty extensive complaint system that allows citizens to make complaints either in person, in writing, over the internet. So depending on what the accusation is, a lot of those times, because our internal affairs is not very big, because we're facing manpower shortages just like everybody else, a lot of that gets sent down to a supervisor like myself to investigate. So I'm pretty comfortable with doing investigations of personnel. It's just, it comes with the job. And, you know, we can do things like look at body camera footage, we can look at mobile video recorder footage. You know, there might be recorded telephone conversations that come into play. You're going to interview witnesses, interview the complainant, take written statements. We can get an explanatory memorandum from the trooper officer involved. So that's, you know, and then I'm gonna take that and say, okay, well, were these administrative and operation rules and guidelines violated? Hopefully we don't get to that. You know, like use of force, we're automatically gonna do a review use of force by the supervisor every time we go beyond handcuffing anybody. I think that's a very good policy, and we look at what happened to make sure that it was in compliance with policy. So, you know, we say sometimes bad guys get broke. They do. It doesn't mean an officer or trooper did anything wrong. It means that was the level of force they needed to overcome resistance. That's really what it comes down to. You know, I work in a pretty big agency. I don't get to write policy. I have to live by policy. Did you ask what, I'm sorry, were you interested in programs at all, or?
No, basically, I was interested in writing policy.
Okay. Writing policy would be more like, daily memorandums, like, with the COVID, things, I had to put out some, barrack-specific, policy about people entering and using the thermometer and infrared thermometer and things like that. As a resident trooper, I had to write, you know, some policy about, use of vehicles or town-specific things that, weren't really covered in the Administration and Operations Manual, because it's a lot smaller for the town than, the overall agency.
How much experience have you had working with collective bargaining unit? And what do you consider the essential elements of effective labor management relations?
Sure. So I started my career in the town of Guilford, which is a shoreline community. I was a patrolman there for 9 years, and during that time, I was the vice president and later the president of the local police union there. So I did help negotiate 2 contracts during that time, and I had to represent other officers in grievances, and I also went and participated in unfair labor practices. So I feel I'm pretty well versed in some differences between grievances and unfair labor practices, and, you know, in retrospect, I really didn't love that job. You know, if there's a lot of grievances filed, I think that's just an indication of there's that atmosphere going on. My time with the state police, I think I've had, I'm just aware of maybe two grievances in the last 20 years that didn't involve me, just in general at the barracks. Because I'm responsible for the fair and equitable distribution of overtime, and we have kind of an antiquated card system for cards, for overtime, and there's a lot of ins and outs and some minuscule rules, even if it's not me, if it's a sergeant doing it, mistakes happen, so people get passed over. That's the biggest gripe that we have. I have a good relationship with the, each barracks has a union rep and, steward, and, sometimes they'll come in and say, hey, this is, somebody says they got passed over, or the trooper themselves will call me and say they got passed over, and you will work something out, I think open communication and being reasonable can go a long way in management labor relations. There are times when, a steward might come up to me and say, oh, hey, we'll kind of have a complaint that has nothing to do with the contract. And that's really kind of my, that's kind of my cutoff a lot of times, where I say, this has nothing to do, but, in that good faith common ground, yeah, I'll try to get so-and-so a new car or whatever. I mean, we only have so many new cars coming out, something like that. But, yeah, I just try to keep any formal need for a grievance at a bare minimum. I mean, I just try to eliminate it. I mean, it's just, there's really the atmosphere where we are now and the morale, it just doesn't really happen very often because we keep that.
What training and experience do you have in developing and implementing services and programs, courses, and or learning objectives that incorporate diversity? We try to be open and have programs, so I've spent a fair amount of time. We have 2 regional school systems that I've traditionally dealt with in the past as a resident trooper sergeant. So we try to be as diverse as the schools in the community. I developed a program so that the schools were concerned with school violence. So what I did is I got together with the superintendents, and we would have roll call at the schools before school started. So if it was an elementary school, we could come in early because they usually kicked off at 9. We'd have roll call at 7. We'd bring everybody in so that they would get familiarized with the school. So if something did happen, it's not the first time that they're coming into this building. And also, if you're in a lockdown, that means we're locked out. So we had to, arrange different ways for the good guys to get in to the building should that need to happen. So that happened at a lot of different schools at a lot of different times. So like the high schools, I think we did closer to the summer months so that we didn't have to worry about it because they had an earlier start time. I get a lot of calls from our PIO office, so that's our public information office, and they have events where they want specific troopers to go to, so I'm always working with that so that we can help with diversity and putting out the message and image that they want. Prior to being in Montville, I was at the other end of the state in Bridgeport, which is a very expansive patrol area, so we're putting about 10 troopers a shift there. But that end of the state was more diverse, so our troopers were more diverse. And again, with tight budgets and lessening personnel, I got down there and I didn't like the way the barracks looked. I drove in, there were some units working out of that barracks, and they had undercover cars, or they called them undercover cars, but the tires were going flat on a lot of them. And I thought it looked like a used car lot. So I always try to make anywhere that I'm assigned better than what I got there. So we had a massive cleanup of the parking lot. We paved all the, we paved the potholes, we got the wrecks that had to be there moved, we got rid of some other cars, and we were left with a terrible looking front of the building. So I found a nonprofit group in the community, that had a program for teens that designed, landscape design, and then they would implement, actually putting it in. So I contacted them, I worked with them, and got them to beautify the front of the building. I thought that was, I think that was good because we were bringing in the community and working with the community, and really they just asked us for the ability to do some ride-alongs with anyone that was in that group that was interested, which is absolutely, we're, I love ride-alongs. Ride-alongs are great. We get people all the time that are like college students that are looking to do law enforcement. We sign them up, we do a quick background check, and they can come in and do a ride-along whenever they want. Have interns come in. That helps us out and diversifies us with coming from local colleges, come in to do ride-alongs and see which, I get calls from a former coworker who's a chief in a nearby town. He says, "Hey, I have a current intern. She's doing some work here. She's done ride-alongs with us. Can you accommodate her?" Absolutely. Let's get her over here. Yep. So that's probably the most diversified programs that I could tell you I've been involved with.
Are your officers required to take diversity training, or have you been part of programs that get out to the communities, diverse communities, training for your officers in that area?
Sure. I've undergone a couple of different instances of diversity training. There's blocks of diversity training when you're at the academy, and it's been probably intermittent throughout my time with the state police. When I was at the State Police Academy, one of the things that my class undertook was going to Willimantic, had like low-income community type housing complex that was pretty drug rampant. There's a lot of problems there, and we went in with the community and we, built playgrounds for that community, and I think it was very impactful for a lot of the kids that were there. There was a lot of interaction, and we had a good interaction with them, so that's something that I always remember. Just on a personal level, I've tried to, be aware of diversity and do diverse things. My extended family is multiracial, so, again, going back to the whole nobody's colorblind, I think I'm a little more sensitive to things that happen or perceptions that you can see people bring across. I sent my children on a church mission to Haiti, which was pretty life-altering. My daughter went down there and came back and said, "I want to be a nurse." So she's in a nursing program, Sacred Heart, playing D1 lacrosse at the same time. My same kind of almost impact with my son, who's, he's in the Marine Corps, but still, my time in the Marine Corps, we never said black, white, yellow, anything. We were dark green or light green. And, I served with people from not only all over the country, but all extremely diverse socioeconomic, everything from, I had a great roommate who was a track scholarship athlete from Indiana to, a coal miner's son from Ohio. So it really, I think when you're
living with everybody like that, realize that we're all the same. We're more the same than we are different.
John, this question is about budgeting. I know that you mentioned in the overview that you've had, some town budget experience, so I'm going to ask you to expound upon that. The police department's budget is approximately $1.8 million of our $16 million town budget. So if you could identify and discuss your budgeting experience, knowledge, and skills that you would bring to this job.
Sure. So I had to prepare the town budget for Essex. So my strategy in that was taking the current budget and comparing, going through that and seeing if there was anything unnecessary that could be eliminated, and then looking at, did we fall short? Do we have a surplus? If we fell short, why? If we have a surplus, why? At the time, we were down one officer, so his salary was offsetting any overtime costs. So, even though line item wise we were above overtime overall, we were fine. You got to start. I think you have to start with the basics. You have to start with what you need. So, you need your salaries. Okay, is there a collective bargaining raise that we have to account for? That's going to be, the next. And then you start looking at capital things like, okay, we have 5 cars. One that 100,000 miles. Are we going to, ask for another car? And then I think you just go down the line there and you look at other items on there, and if it's, I like truth in advertising. So I never tried to pad a budget because it's like, oh well, maybe they won't notice this, so I'm going to leave it in even though we haven't used this line item in the last 2 years. It's we'll use it later on. I just think that's disingenuous, and it's more of a game, and I've dealt with the other people with budgets, and they have the the use it or lose it mentality when you're coming up in June, and if it's something that you actually need, that's fine. That maybe got overlooked. I had the ability to go and get permission to say, okay, I'm not using this over here, but we have that huge walk-in closet off the garage, and the guys are using it for a locker room, and it's really, it's really terrible. I can get these new stadium lockers, 1 locker for every officer, and things like that, simple things can just really increase morale, and that's why I focus on facilities, because if you're walking into a barracks or a police department that, half the lights aren't working, or the grass isn't cut, or there's file cabinets that nobody's using stacked up in the corner or in the hallway, it's like a broken window theory. If it doesn't look good, you're not going to feel good. You don't feel good, you're not going to produce. So everywhere I've gone, that's part of me trying to make a barracks or where I work better, where I've, okay, I have to call a fleet, get a truck over here, I get to round up some guys, my admin guy, and, we come in cities and we start loading up, nobody uses file cabinets. I don't know about you guys, but nobody uses file cabinets anymore. So, every barracks or every police department has this room where all this stuff is stacking up, and because nobody gets rid of it, so I've become the guy that gets rid of it. So I have to coordinate with fleet, get the truck, I have to call up asset management, I have to fill out this huge form, I have to record all the little numbers that are on the tags, and finally get rid of that. And then people come to work and they're like, wow, I've never seen this before. There was a seized, and seized cars are like that too. I have an evidence officer, so I'm always after them, can we get rid of anything? There's no room in the impound, what can we get rid of? There was a trailer there for forever. That was just what is with this trailer? Well, it's been there for 12 years. Well, let's it's time to make it go away, So I just think that adds to morale at a time when it's kind of tough to feel good about our
profession, even though we're, we're the ones coming in and doing the right things. We're just taking such a kick in the teeth right now that, that's what I like to do.
Thank you very much.
Okay, here I am again. As a lifelong resident of Adams, I have witnessed the evolution of our police department. I vividly remember as a young man, the officers walking the streets and addressing you as you passed by. The nightly rounds to stores to check their security. The writing of tickets for expired parking meters. In short, the Adams police had a visible presence and you knew who they were. Times have changed. They always do. No longer do the town's police officers walk the beat. They drive their cruisers to accomplish their tasks. No longer do they check stores after closing. Instead, they shine a spotlight on a business facade and move on. No longer do they write parking tickets for meter violations. We needed to add a town physician to make this transaction. I must admit that I cannot put a name to a face of all of our police officers. What is your take on policing, which I term resident friendly?
Sure. So, I like to say that, when people ask me about community-oriented policing, I like to say the police have been doing it since 1903, because we have that resident trooper program where we provide a dedicated, trooper to a community. So, most of the people, I think, know who the resident troopers is. Some come and go, but we've had, some that have been in town for 16, 12. They spend a lot of time, where they are because they like it and they like the people. When I started, we did exactly that. We had, Route 1 was our commercial zone, and we had that divided up into 4, we called them blocks, they're just 4 sections. And depending on what patrol you were, you had 2 out of those 4 sections to check. And what we couldn't physically see, we physically got out of the car, rattled doorknobs, and checked windows. And I'll tell you what, that was a huge, success with the business owners. And there was actually business owners that said, I like being here because this is what the police do every night. And, if we set up their alarm, we set up their alarm. Or, a lot of times we find a door open, hey, get them out of bed, come on down here. But, no one ever complained that we found their door or their window unlocked. It was beneficial to them. You gotta get out of your car. You gotta go talk to people. If it's your call volumes that are keeping you from doing that, you need to look at ways to implement that. There's coffee with the cop. If I'm selected for the position, I'd be more than happy to go sit down somewhere and have people come and have a cup of coffee and talk about their concerns and see what their priorities and concerns are with policing in the community. Everybody knows where I live. I've had a cop car parked in my driveway for 20 years. So, I'm right on a road. So, I still get people that will see me in the yard and stop and ask me questions or knock on my door and ask me, questions about something going on or the law or, I'll be in line at Dunkin' Donuts and somebody's like, ask me about what happened last night. And I'm like, I don't know, I haven't made it to work yet. Sometimes I sleep, sometimes I'm home. I don't know as much as I'd like to know everything, I don't know everything going on. But, so people know who I am. And if we need to, put a face on the police and get them out more, then I'd be all for it. When I first started, we used to have, the local paper was very, good about running police activity and what we did, and they used to do a little, they did an introduce the police and had our little bio and what we were interested in, our hobbies and our educational background, where we're from, that kind of thing. So that would be one way to put a face on police.
But there's also other, you know, if you have an agricultural fair, you have, events going on, it's a great time to get a little pop-up tent and get out there and have some, seatbelt literature or, dare awareness or, you know, some, the kids love the sticker badges. So that's just a way for the police, for the community to approach the police and get to know the officers better. That's what I would look for inroads as the chief, at those kind of events. I know, I saw that you had a bike patrol, hopefully that's still going. I got up here early, I rode around the town, very nice. I took a walk on the rail trail, that's a great path. There's a lot of people, rollerblading and biking, and it's a great benefit to the town, it's very nice. I would definitely want, in the summer months, to get cops back on bikes and get out there, and I think there was some concern about dog waste, or, I mean, yeah.
Done your research.
Yes, I'm trying not to come in cold, yeah. So, I mean, bikes are great. We have, a certified bike trainer in Connecticut that gives free classes every year, and I've sent a lot of my guys to it. It's Southern Connecticut, State College, and it's like I think it's like a 4-day. So, you know, for the cost of a uniform, I'm putting somebody out on bikes that we already have. And, you know, in the town of Westbrook's, any community, speeding is gonna be like a hot button. So our shoreline just explodes in the summer. You know, we have, you know, 3 times the population on the weekends than we normally have year round. And of course, there's some beach roads and people complain about the people speeding, but, you know, beach roads are like teeny tiny, you know, you almost have to pull over for another car to go the other way. So we'd get a handheld radar and put my guy on a bike, and he'd go down and he'd be on the bike, and, you know, nobody's gonna see him on the bike. So, you know, you can do that with a car. So, you know, we have a huge Durham fair every year in Troop F's area, and, you gotta have bike patrol. You gotta have the bikes out there. It's a great benefit. Parades, we bring them out. That'd be a great way to get people out of the cars, the cops out of the cars, and to the community.
Thank you. Just for your information, 22 years old, I co-founded the Adams Agricultural Fair.
That's great.
And we're the only fair left in Berkshire County.
Well, I hope it keeps going. That's a great experience and a great time.
Thank you.
Okay, the Adams Police Department works closely with the Adams Fire Department, the Adams Forest Wardens, EMS, Regional Emergency Management, State Police, as well as community-based organizations. What has made you an effective collaborator in your current warpath south?
Sure, I love resources. So, again, that most applicable would be back to my resident trooper, sergeant activity, because, there's no predominantly volunteer, fire departments in the area where I work. I mean, there are some cities like Middletown where, you know, we come out, but, I mean, those guys are great. I mean, fire departments are a wealth of resources for the police. So you gotta maintain those good, relationships. I mean, we would have, you know, we like to have, you know, when we have a bunch of guys retiring, or we have a big promotion, we clean out the garage at Troop F, and, we'd spruce it all up. We had it down with signs. But we needed tables and chairs. We don't have tables and chairs. So we call up Essex and say, hey, can we come pick up your table, you know, the fire department, hey, can we come get your tables and chairs? Absolutely. They didn't like us. They would say no, you know. You know, if there's animosity, you need to just, like, you need to stop that. And that's just usually face to face and say, hey, you know, what's going on? Like, can we work this out? You know, there was a time when, a trooper got sprayed with a fire hose years ago, and, you know, fireman, that was on purpose. The fireman ended up getting carried away in handcuffs, and that's not what you want to see. You know, there was some, like, dating thing that was kind of contributed to that. But, you know, after that happens, you got to go down to the firehouse and say, listen, like, this, you know, let's just nip this in the bud. Like, this is not good.
DEP, we have conservation officers working in our areas. I know them all. There's not many of them, so, you know, we rely on them. They rely on us, especially for backing, people up. Again, I work with, regional school systems, all the time. Recently, we've been able to put an SRO on our technical school, where, at my current assignment. I think that's a huge benefit. And some of the local non-state schools are also trying to, get back to that, which I think is hugely beneficial. But yeah, I'll have a superintendent call me up and say, hey, this is, you know, I'm hearing this, is this what's going on? I'm like, okay, well, you know, let me ask, I'll find out, and I'll get back to you. You know, I've had superintendents say, hey, we want to do a drug sweep. You bring your dogs in. Okay, yeah, if that's what you want to do. Yeah, I'll set it up. You know, but you just, you know, you have some ground rules about what's going to happen, when you're doing that. But yeah, we're not going to miss that opportunity. That's what the superintendent asking us to come in. We're not asking, you know, if that's what you want to do, then we're going to help you out. Yeah, I just find that the more you network and the more resources you have, even within my agency, because there's different units and, different people that can help us out, the more the better. So, and, you know, and again, just like boards, you need to have that good relationship with boards, and, you know, I've been asked to, you know, come in and address the Board of Selectmen, sometimes with a joint Board of Finance meeting about budgetaries and other concerns. So, yeah, that's answers the question.
Yeah. In thinking about regional and collaborative nature of the police chief position, what is your experience working with the district attorney's office?
So, we call them state's attorneys. So there's a state's attorney at each, geographical location, and then there's an overall, they're actually deputy or assistant state's attorney, depending on their level, and then there's an overall state's attorney for overseeing all of them. I have a great relationship with them. You got it, because, you know, something's gonna go sideways somewhere, with, you know, court paperwork, or, you know, that's kind of a constant battle sometimes to make sure things are getting the court, and the right things are getting the court in the right order. And, you know, with the COVID, it was even more, you know, more intense to get things there and electronically that we never used to do. I also, you know, and you're gonna have disagreements sometimes. You know, you're, you know, a lot of times you think you've got a solid arrest warrant, and, you know, you're presenting it to, you know, an assistant state's attorney, and it comes back, you know, denied. And, okay, well, like, why? You know, so you gotta have that relationship to call them up and say, you know, what am I lacking here? Like, why aren't we on the same page? And, if you have you know, sometimes they're just gonna flat out say no, and they don't wanna deal with it. They have a lot more discretion than the police. Other times, I've, you know, told the trooper, okay, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna eliminate this, and this charge, and we're gonna go with this one charge, and, you know, I'm gonna write a memo or call them up and reinforce it with the memo and say, listen, this is what's going on. Like, we're getting into a danger area here. We really need some enforcement action with this guy who's, you know, being reckless with his guns. And, you know, if you read the statute, you don't need to know where the property line is. I'm thinking of a specific issue, but it's, you don't have a good relationship with them, they're just gonna get, you know, they're potentially gonna get mad at you, and that's gonna affect things, down the line. I've worked, pretty extensively with, there's court investigators, so they're like the left-hand man of the assistant state's attorney. I supervised the investigation of an extensive, burglary ring, and I had to do several search warrants and a lot of ex parte orders for internet and telephone records, and the collaboration there is key to get things going and moving and back in time to do your investigation.
The position of police chief requires a high degree of accountability. What does accountability mean to you in a legal sense with regard to data and metrics in terms of relations with the community?
So I think when you're the chief, the chief, really the buck stops with you. You can't be there to control everything. You're not, we're a 24/7, 365 organization, but you're not there that entire time. So, when something goes sideways, you need to hold your people accountable, but you're also, I think, in most instances, you're gonna have to also accept responsibility that what was supposed to happen didn't happen. I've always told my subordinates, like, if something goes wrong, if something's messed up, tell me. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to, dismiss it, brush it under. We can take care of it. That's one of the things that upsets me as a supervisor, when people know that something's wrong, and rather than address it, they try to hope it goes away. I'd rather, we're not, we don't work at a workbench using micrometers measuring clock parts. The essence of our job is taking care of things that go wrong. Hopefully the things that are going wrong are not the police themselves, but because it's an imperfect world and we're dealing with obviously imperfect situations, it can go wrong. Things can get misplaced, or hindsight's always great. Maybe we should have done something else, or we should have done something in addition to what we did. So if I know about it, we can get ahead of it and take care of it. That's my theory. So, the police are not a separate entity from the community. The police are part of the community. And, if something does go wrong, that's why it's important to have that firm relationships with everything and the people we've been discussing tonight. Because if you don't, it's just gonna be worse. You need that foundation to say, yeah, we messed up and this is what we're doing about it.
So, John, we've been talking to you for about an hour, and we're done with our formal questions. Oh, you have a follow-up?
I do have one.
Go ahead. Sorry.
According to your resume, all your law enforcement education and experience is in Connecticut. Do you know if you are certified or what you would need to be certified in Massachusetts?
Sure. So, back to networking and using resources, after I talked to Ms. White, my first call, was to a former coworker who is now a chief of police in another Massachusetts town. So, he said, yeah, it's, basically, I would need to send my training records. He said there's not a Massachusetts post like we have, so I'd have to find out exactly who they get sent to. There's a comparable analysis done. If there's something, sometimes the hours don't match up. It could be something like, I don't know, domestic violence, or Massachusetts might have a different subject that they like to highlight, like we have mandatory gang recognition. It might be something like that. So I would just have to try to get that class to satisfy Massachusetts requirement, and then sometime over a year, I have to take some online training for the differences in motor vehicle and criminal law, and then there's an online test that I would have to submit.
You're very welcome.
Chair, I have a follow-up.
Go ahead.
I should be asking this to all of the individuals that come out of, especially out of state. If selecting for this interim position, what would be your, residence or housing? Because you're from Connecticut, I'm sure you're established there. How would you deal with an interim?
Sure. So, not the optimal, condition for my family, but, it is interim, it's 6 months. I'm at a position in my career where I would, like the challenge. I think I've, mastered my current position. you know, schedules and overtime and schedules and more overtime, it's not my dream job, you know? I mean, I like to challenge myself, so that's part of the reason why I've pursued promotion. That's why I've continued my education. It gives me that self-satisfaction of accomplishment and again, challenge. So chief is the next, you know, logical step for me. There's things going on in my agency that contribute to my feeling that it's time to go. Some of my classmates have already gone. They're changing, part of it is they're changing the pension, so there's a clock ticking for a lot of us that are eligible to retire. I by no means am just throwing myself at this because, you know, that clock is ticking. I'm here because I think this is a good fit, and it's something that I would like to experience. You know, promotions are bogged down where I am right now, so I don't really see that. The last sergeant's test is legally challenged, so that's really damming up. They can't, you know, promote me to lieutenant because they haven't promoted sergeants and master sergeants, which we're drastically short on. There's only like 8 of me left. It should be 11 or 12. So, you know, we're the people that would be promoted to sergeant, so they can't empty out the sergeant ranks yet. So, yeah, I would find an apartment up here. I would, you know, go home, you know, not every weekend. Hopefully my family would want to come see me on the weekend. You know, we're both sides of the family are, you know, somewhat military experienced. I was older when I picked up and went to the police academy for 6 months. My wife doesn't want to relive that again, but it's doable, you know. So I certainly would want to live in town and be in the community that I would be working in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So is there something that you wanted to share with us that maybe we didn't ask about? I just wanted to give you an opportunity to take this time and share something with us that maybe we didn't ask.
I would just ask, it may have already happened, but if there's anything where I fell short or you wanted clarification or maybe more answer, that would be my question, because I don't want any of you leaving here thinking, oh, maybe I should have asked him about, you know, what he said.
Anyone?
Well, thank you.
Do you have other questions of us?
No, well, I think the only, the question I would have is, you seem to be on a timeline, so the problem I have is I'm ticking closer to the end of the month, which I would have HR requirements to submit my, you know, intent to retire, so I'm just wondering when you predict notifying.
Certainly. So, as we talked about on Monday, we are moving through a process pretty quickly. It is our intent to be in touch with all of the candidates as early as next week with where we are in the process and potential next steps, which might include a selection of somebody.
Okay.
So, but that's still yet to be determined. That's still kind of our timeframe. Our current chief has indicated his retirement date of July 13th, right? I think it's the 13th. But has also indicated a willingness to stay on as needed for the transition. So
great.
That's kind of where we're at.
Okay.
We've been trying to be as respectful of his date as much as possible, but COVID hit. Our chief gave us 6 months notice, which was very kind, about his retirement, and told us first week of January, and had indicated end of our fiscal year as his end date, but staying on for a couple more weeks while we go through this process.
Great.
After 36 years, he deserves to retire on time.
That's quite a run.
Yeah.
Becoming more and more scarce.
Yeah. So we're appreciative of that. Anything else?
I'd just like to thank you for your time and opportunity to be here, and, I'm sure you're getting tired of hearing people speak, so I'm gonna stop right here.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate making the trip and, coming early and driving around our community and the nice things that you said about our community, so
Thank you.
much appreciated. All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a safe trip there.
Thank you.
Yeah.